Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to a session which will resonate with every deal maker, investor, business leader, and advisor in this room. Private equity and M&A, rethinking value creation. The rule of PE playbook are being rewritten in real time. Buy cheap, lever up, exit in 5 years. The old formula no longer exists. The new playbook asks for more. Deals take longer, exit needs smarter timing, capital is more selective. And AI is changing how we evaluate, acquire, integrate, and grow a target business. So what does winning look like in the next cycle? This panel is helping us to answer exactly that. Amit, between PA, M&A, and AI, what is left for us to do?
See, Neetu, what we are doing today is we are playing the most important role, the introducing the people who can say, they can manage all three. So introducing the first speaker or the moderator of the sessions, Ms. Megha Kapoor, who is going to moderate the sessions and getting the answers of most difficult questions for us. She is the managing director and head of the London office, Serafin, a German family office writing real checks into the European private equity assets. 20 plus years experience across India and Europe. She does the hard deals, cow cuts, spin-offs, and cross-border M&A. The one that look impossible on paper. Please welcome our moderator, Ms. Megha Kapoor, on the stage.
Mr. Ashish Tulsian, partner at Deloitte. Ashish lives in real trenches, buy-side, sell-side tech deals, IPOs, equity raises. Deloitte, EY, KPMG, he has seen the big four from every angle. When tech deals go sideways, Ashish is the one they call. Please welcome Ashish Tulsian.
I want to see the big round of applause for all the panelists and the moderator, please. And the next panelist is going to be the Mr. Jonathan Broadis. He's at S&W Group now. Before that, UK M&A consulting lead at TCS. He has played the senior roles at Deloitte, KPMG, and PwC, all three. And the full Big Four tour, the 25 years of experience in the deal work and increasingly AI-powered M&A. Please welcome Mr. Jonathan Broadis.
Mr. Anish Malu, Managing Director at PSG Equity in London. PSG is one of those PE houses that actually understand tech. Anish brings institutional PE expertise to growth technology business. Co-founded the European Transactional Services practice at FTI Consulting from scratch. That is legacy. And a proud chartered accountant. Please welcome Mr. Anish Malu.
See, I'm not hearing the applause. I told you in the beginning that I want to see that energy transition between you and the panelists and between us. So the final panelist, Mr. Achal Bhuwania, the Chief Investment Officer at Equitex. The 50 plus transactions, over 7 billion pounds of equity deployed. The deals he had led includes the stakes in the M25 motorway and the Crossrail rolling stock on the Elizabeth line. Every time you drive around London, yesterday I was driving also, I was traveling in the Elizabeth line. So to hope on the Lizzie line, you are traveling on Achal Bhuwania's deal, an infrastructure investment powerhouse. Mr. Achal Bhuwania.
Yeah, I think the energy is very low. Sorry.
Who is saying that? Yeah. Okay.
You need
Yes,
to call
I feel
people
the same.
from outside into the room, I think, yeah? It's a very important topic for discussion.
I think the people just went to grab a coffee. So I think this panel is exceptional in the best possible way. And so much deal experience we can see on the stage. And Megha, over to you to bring out the best out of them.
So first of all, it's great to be here. Thank you for the introductions. We have a fantastic panel here today with very different perspectives. And I'm looking forward to a very engaging conversation. So in M&A, we spend a lot of time talking about value creation. And Ankurji also spoke of that 200% ROIs. I don't think it's possible for us to get to those ROIs, but let's get to some form of value creation. But in the end, it is ultimately determined by few key specific levers. and a handful of decisions. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So what I would really like is for us to keep it based on real experiences, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what would you do differently. So let me begin by a quick question to each of you. In one sentence, where is value really created in M&A today? Achal, would you like to start?
Firstly, thank you for inviting me here. Very pleased to be here in the first conference. Quite tough to match the energy of Ankur Bhai. So to answer Megha's question in one sentence, I'm a big believer that value lies in the eyes of the beholder. Value is imperfect. Value in my eyes can be quite different from another investor. So, but again, focus on the fundamentals, but have the lens of, I'll say in Hindi, have the lens of a Johari. So you need to carefully assess the fundamentals, but conviction is personal. And conviction comes from experience and taking some risks.
Thanks. I think a slightly different perspective here. Can I get another mic? A slightly different perspective here. I think M&A thrives in a private equity environment. I guess if you look at the private equity returns over time, the top quartile and the median quartile private equity house typically deliver a superior return to a FTSE 100. So for me, I think in one sentence, M&A driven by private equity has the immense potential of a large value creation.
Can you hear me now? There we are. Thank you, Ajay. Thank you, Vineet, for the invitation. Organising committee, been a wonderful experience today. Very, very privileged and honoured to be here. So thank you very much to all of you for giving me such a warm welcome. My view on this is that I agree with what both of you have said so far, but really for me, looking at it from more of a consulting advisory point of view, it is scaling platforms, and in particular, what value creation to me is creating opportunity for scale, and what private equity is super effective at is spotting that opportunity and executing it faster than most corporate organizations, and taking an organization that's undervalued and making it more valuable and then passing it on to another custodian to do the same process. That's something that private equity is extremely effective at. So I would say it is about the scaling of the platforms, if I had to suit one sentence.
Thanks, guys, for having me here. It's quite emotional because it was back in 2007, 2008. I was part of the chapter at that time to sort of like re-galvanize the workforce, bring everyone together. And it's great to see what the team today has actually put together. It's definitely makes me feel quite proud. And what the guys have actually put together is incredible. So thank you. From a value creation perspective, right, and given I spend most of my time in the tech sector, which everyone will know is just going through a massive flux, and has been in that space since the time people started sort of like hearing the word AI. So I'll give you a very specific example there. Like what I'm seeing in tech businesses is the companies who've got a sort of like a robust, agile tech stack, and ability to think through what is coming next, keeping it flexible and agile, having the right investment and the roadmap out there, whilst maintaining the discipline of operational leverage, would be a good success for a tech business.
Thank you. It's really interesting. It's four very, very different perspectives from conviction, buy and build, AI. So let's delve into this a little bit deeper. What really moves the needle today? Is it cost optimization? Is it growth? Is it pricing power or something else? So Achal, I would like to start with you is, in your deals, where are you seeing the most common levers or places where most value is created? And if you could give us a concrete example of where a lever has outperformed expectation.
I mean, working in the mid-market, I mean, our fund is one of the largest infrastructure funds in the UK in the mid-market. What we are observing is in the mid-market, there are a lot more opportunities, a lot more value as compared to the larger cap. And we are seeing a lot more attractive deals and opportunities than amount of capital available. So it's a buyer's market from that context. And in relation to, I mean, then it becomes it's always when you have more capital, there's less deals to do. And when there's less capital, there are more deals to do. So we're in the market where there are definitely more deals to do. And then it becomes a tougher choice. How we think about it is relative value. Now, everybody is crowding towards AI, data centers, and what we feel is it's quite an overcrowded market at this point. There's not enough relative value. But on the other hand, we're seeing relative value in other things which is considered quite boring, like investing into let's say, schools, hospitals, or streetlights, which may not be as glamorous as investing into large AI data centers, etc. So from our perspective, it's not having the fear of missing out, focused on relative value, and thinking about how can you be differentiated when you are in a marketplace when there are a lot more opportunities than capital. And then answering a question on what's worked, what's not worked. In my view, sticking to conviction, sticking to your DNA, sticking to what you do best, rather than get carried away by momentum around you. So I'll say, example of what's worked, like we invested in, let's say, Elizabeth Line, which we spoke about. Now, Elizabeth Line, when we invested into it in 2018-19, this worked really well. At that point, nobody knew how the traffic will be. Today, Elizabeth Line is one of the busiest lines in Europe in terms of traffic, acceptance, and we all can see it's in terms of the quality of the rolling stock, in terms of the experience, is a lot better than other tube lines. And what's not worked is a lot of unknown unknowns when you're involved. And that unknown unknowns can manifest itself and quite difficult to mitigate. Like COVID hit in 2020, Ukraine war happened, and now we have got another situation in the Middle East. So the unknown unknowns always happen, and the question is, how do you deal with that? And we had a situation where building a power plant, where the feedstock was waste. And the power plant, the construction company was impacted by Ukraine, because they had supply chain. I mean, we're in a world of interconnected supply chain. And as a result of that, there were cost escalations, et cetera. But the important thing to learn from that is working in partnership with the supply chain and not ignoring the problem. So we reacted in a way where we worked in partnership rather than contracts. So again, my view is when you're involved in opportunities and looking at ideas, sticking to discipline, sticking to DNA, and working in partnership and collaboration is integral. So I'll stop there.
Well, thank you. I need to do infra because for me it's a seller's market still, doing carve-outs. Interesting that you mentioned growth. So Anish, from a PE lens, do you think growth is doing more of the heavy lifting right now, or is it operational improvement?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think I work for PSG Equity. Just a bit of background before I answer the specific question. So we are a growth private equity house. We only do B2B SaaS software investments. And we started PSG 13 years ago, and today it's a $30 billion AUM business. All right, we've got 160 platform businesses, and clearly value creation through the operational lens, through operational capability is the big mantra for us. How do we think about these investments, right? So the success factor, or at least the key mantra for me, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room know, it's a rule of X. What is that rule of X? What does that essentially mean? Right? It's essentially an aggregation of your revenue growth and your EBITDA margin. Right? Think of it as, hey, if my software business is growing by 20% and I have a 25% EBITDA margin, it's a rule of 45 as a business. Right? A rule of 40 plus is a healthy software business. How do you drive that value, right? I think the value creation levers are essentially focusing on the rule of X, which is what is going to drive your exit valuations over time. What is this rule of X? Clearly, if we look at it conceptually, top line growth, margin growth, which is a combination of, hey, how do you drive top line growth? How do you drive optimization in a business to drive EBITDA margins? Right? It is fairly simple. I've put it very simply, but clearly so many levers behind each of those value creation themes, right? You've got, hey, I buy a business which is a single product, single region business. I want to make it a multi-product, multi-regional business. That's one value lever. Hey, I've got AI today. I don't need any of the code developers, right? Coding is done by AI. I need to drive that optimization. Get the thinking in the team to think about return on capital, right? You need to get management aligned on return on capital. I put $100 million. In 4 years' time, I need to see 3x. How do I get there? Right? So again, I think, Megha, to answer your question, for me, the mantra is the rule of X, top line growth, EBITDA margin, value creation levers, focused around both of those levers to essentially drive a 3x multiple of money over the ownership period.
Thank you. It's interesting because I would probably only focus on the bottom line, but funds like yours are focusing on both, which is much more sensible. Jonathan,
Yeah.
you see many more deals in an advisory capacity. Can you spot one lever that is often overestimated or overpaid for at entry?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I think there's a number of ways we can answer it. I've always thought that when we talked about growth and revenue synergies, but they are notoriously hard to get, and people are very, very reluctant to actually quantify them, because if you do, especially if you do a listed transaction, you can be in a lot of trouble with investors if you don't deliver them, and they are subject to so many variables. You know, you've got black swan moments that potentially could disrupt that. You've also got, you know, force majeure situations. You've got contractual disputes or something like that. So you can't actually predict those things very well. But what you can do in those situations, at least have some predictability of quality of earnings, which is quite important from a revenue perspective. So I think that's probably one of the hardest ones. From a cost side, unless people have got a good track record at actually delivering cost synergies, it can go very badly wrong. And I would say I would trust a team who's actually got a coherent plan where they can demonstrate they've got either people who've done it before or they're going to bring in people who've done it before. Then they can actually say, yeah, we are going to achieve the ROI. It's going to take 20% or 25% out of the cost base over this time period. And, you know, it's a coherent plan that everyone can buy into. Where I think, from a cultural point of view, and the more I've done my work, I think it comes down to people. If people as a management team don't gel, and probably one of the things you guys see is teams that you trust and think, yeah, these guys look good. Trust them. You can see there's a good management team. There's faith in each other. They've got coherence. Where there isn't that, it's very, very bad. And you may have to change the management. And then there may be further politics that then kick off. And if there's politics in these situations, it has a direct impact on the achievability of cost reductions or even revenue growth, because you get disharmony, and that's not a very good thing to have. In the short run, maybe it achieves results, but in a sort of 3 to 5 year window, it doesn't really achieve any results. So I think these are some of the things I would pick out. Now, it's very interesting. We're now in an investment cycle. A lot of investments were made in 2021 at the top of the COVID investment boom. So a lot of people were very, very buoyant about, you know, portfolio company investments. A lot of those investments have not worked out the way they were supposed to. So what is happening now, as you guys will be aware, is that either people are selling and, okay, they've achieved what they want to achieve and there's a good process that could happen, or it's not going to go so well. So there's a definite need for value creation before you actually go through that sale process, or indeed maybe it's a secondary transaction, people do a continuation vehicle to take it forward, and that seems to be where it's gone, the extension of the investment window. So I think putting that all together, I think it puts a premium on quality of execution, really. And if people don't know how to execute, we have something of a problem, really. Does that make sense?
Yes, very well summarized. Ashish, from a DD perspective, do you see similar insights as what John is saying? And is there any one deal where a DD insight really changed your view on the deal materially?
It's an interesting one, right? So where Achal and Anish are actually sitting, they'll be looking at the number of different factors, right? So sadly, there wouldn't be one specific finding on a DD that would actually materially change. I think it needs to be a combination of a number of different factors, because generally investors will have a lot of things there in the kitty. If one is not right, you can pull another lever to fix it, to balance the balance of the rule of 40 or 80 that Anish was talking about. Where I sit sort of like in the financial diligence perspective, if I sort of like split that in two buckets, and I'll give you an example. So like quality of earnings and quality of cash flows, right? They're all intertwined, but you can sort of like split the two. And when you're focusing on quality of earnings, you sort of like automatically looking at the top line that Anish was talking about, and then the operational leverage or the margins the business is delivering. In tech businesses, one of the very important things, and particularly in SaaS or SaaS businesses or businesses with recurring revenue, we spend a lot of time slicing and dicing the top line performance of the business, right? So a lot of times when businesses are not well prepared, and this is with my buy side, when I'm advising investors on the buy side hat on, when businesses are not well prepared, or people are trying to sort of like hide things under the carpet, you're not necessarily going to get the quality of data to be able to sort of like see all the drivers of the top line growth over a historical period. Like you can take history as a guidance for the future. And some of the things that we'd like to see is how much has been the price increase, how much has been sort of like the growth from new customers versus what you've actually, you might bring in a customer at a low base, but you might then upsell additional features and functionalities to the customer to grow the ACV, the annual contract value of the customer, or you may actually sell them additional modules or products, or cross-sell is what we call them, right? And these things are individually very important to actually to the investment thesis, because it helps you form and tie in your commercial diligence findings into how much of growth can be expected from different elements of the top line performance. And it's pretty natural to see some of these actually changing over a period of time. So when it's a growth business, you would expect more new customers coming out of the platform. If it moves to a mid-market or more a mature business, you will see more upsell and cross-sell into existing business, and probably less new customers as the market is more penetrated. And one very specific example that I would have, without naming any businesses, is a lot of these price, upsell, and cross-sell were all sort of like presented in aggregate, with a view that you can't segregate them, data is not good quality. And I was on the call with the CFO and said, just throw the data to us and we'll figure it out, right? And that actually became a very, very fundamental point for my client to effectively pull the plug, because the business was not exciting enough. Most of the historical growth had come from price increases, wherein the commercial DD findings were suggesting that there's a lot of price penetration still to happen in the business, and some of that opportunity was already taken away. But suddenly you say that business is not cross-selling, upselling more to its existing customer base, so it put question mark on companies' go-to-market strategy, management team, a lot of other question marks that came along with it.
Thank you so much. That's very interesting. So a good QoE analysis makes my job into half if Deloitte has done it. So I am very grateful for that. So now let's, yeah.
Is there a problem with the mic, or I'm not sure if everyone can hear us perfectly well or not? Is it okay, or? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
As long as you're awake.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah, I think we should shut that door, please, if we can.
Because now we're going to get to the interesting part as well. Till now it's just wake up.
Yeah, thank you.
So one area that is getting a lot of attention in deals right now is AI, and we can't have a panel on value creation and not talk about AI, briefly at least. Jonathan, I'm going to come to you as you're the AI expert. Is it still a hype, or is there really real impact on deals?
I think it's having different impacts at different parts of the market depending on what's going on, right? I mean, my view is that it's a tool, and it is going to have a fundamental shift, but it's still quite early days, but it depends on which area of the market you're working at. I think, big advisory, big law firms are quite aggressively using the AI tools to help the diligence process, speed it up, make it cheaper, standardization of due diligence templates, this type of thing, standardizing queries for data rooms, standardizing preparation of data books, presentations, this type of thing. So as a client, you can get your report quicker and cheaper. I think where there's probably still work to do is actually how does it find value within the data. I think if you've got a very big data cube, you can set off an AI algorithm to work quite happily to find things, but you need to be very much on top of what it's going to look for. Otherwise, you will end up with it hallucinating or looking for the wrong things, or it'll miss something very obvious. This is the key thing, right? Because it's still, let's say, 80% of where it should be. They say agentic will get to 98%, I think, by about 2930, which is in itself quite a fundamental shift, but we're not quite at that point. But what we do need is the guardrails of the experienced people around the AI to be able to interpret it the right way, because it is open to misinterpretation. And I think a number of law firms, professional services firms have got in trouble for just AIing reports, and it's just come up with a load of hogwash. And we have to be very careful against that. So I think that demonstrates why we need to make sure it does have the guardrails. Now, in terms of more going into the operational side, as opposed to doing a due diligence or doing the actual work, I think where it needs to be focused on is not necessarily AI per se, but finding the inefficiencies within a portfolio company. So what is a manual process? Let's take finance function. Our finance friends were up here this morning talking about this. Audit. If there's a lot of manual processes, a lot of transactions, intercompany transactions, this is completely ripe for operational efficiency, automation. AI can be the tool that does it. But the question I would ask is, where are the inefficiencies? Where are the high costs in the processes? Where is it not efficient, and where is it not productive for people to do this work? Then we introduce the AI, use different AI tools in the most efficient and possible way, and make it very, very rigorous in order to deliver those efficiencies. That's where I think probably the answer to that question is. But it's still quite early days.
Yeah, I think Anish wants to add to that.
Sorry, I know uninvited, but it'll be unfair as a software investor if I didn't speak about AI. Right? So just a perspective, I think the world is thinking that, hey, is software dead with the advent of AI, right? And yeah, there are some headwinds from AI on software businesses, which are essentially a public source data software businesses, essentially a business with a single source or single point of solution businesses, right? Yes, these businesses are heavily exposed to AI and probably will be wiped out fairly shortly. But businesses which are embedded into call it an office of the CFO system, which is embedded into the environment of the IT environment of a software business or if a non-software business, these businesses will only benefit from AI, i.e. it'll just help them layer on top of their existing businesses to drive AI throughput. That's more on the product side, and then again, John, as you mentioned, on the operational side, hey, AI is here to drive efficiency, right? We clearly, as we mentioned earlier, you don't need those code developers, you don't need those manual efforts. It's all going to be done. And essentially, if you think as a chartered accountant, what will the P&L look like? Hey, it's going to be a reclassification of your expenses from personnel expenses to call it AI tools, right? To call it to cloud, to call it to chatbot, etc. Right? But I think I just wanted to drive home one point, which is hey, for certain embedded software businesses, AI is essentially a driver for growth rather than a headwind.
Thank you. It's interesting you say that, and I would have come to both of you, Achal and Anish, to ask you, are you really valuing it in your investment thesis? Because I know I am looking at it subjectively and saying, hey, they've got 300 FTEs. I don't think in finance I'll need 50, I'll need 10. But it's very abstract. And I don't know what tools I'm going to implement, but I know it can be done with 10. And it's just a commercial judgment at this stage. So I don't know if you have gone into it a little more specific and detailed.
Yeah, I'm an investor in the infrastructure sector, and infrastructure is typically more asset heavy. Again, as an infrastructure investor, it's more about relevance, as we see. Will the asset be relevant in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or it'll be obsolete? So from our perspective, we are more focused on enablers of AI, whether it's data centers or providing utility services or power plants which are supporting those data centers. So as such, the kind of businesses we invest in, the EBITDA margins are very high because they're asset heavy. So if you're investing in a business with a 70% EBITDA margin, the marginal benefits of AI will be there, but not as much as the kind of businesses which Anish can talk about as a PE investor. So I'll say that from infrastructure perspective is different, but one thing is very important is the velocity of activity. So in my world of infrastructure private equity, if a decision to go ahead or to assess something was taking weeks, it could take days or even minutes. And for me, that's the importance of AI in what we do, is the relevance of the asset in 10, 20, 30 years' time, or the velocity of activity and how quickly I can make a decision with the help of AI. So that's the perspective I have as an infrastructure investor and how AI can impact infrastructure.
Thank you so much. I think it's very interesting to see how AI will affect margins in different businesses differently. Ashish, for you, because you work a lot with the large cap funds, right? Are you seeing a faster adoption with them and especially the American funds?
So when it comes to AI, I think the speed automatically comes with it, right? There's no doubt about a first mover's advantage in this space. But it's very important to think about the quality of the business. You don't want to bring too much change too quickly. That sort of like damages the fabric of the business. This is on the operational side, right? And there's an ability in the management team, in the business, to manage the change. Culture is to the heart of it. So whenever I sit with investors and talk to them, culture is to the heart of it because whether we like it or not, it's creating operational efficiencies, which means less FTE within the business. And hence that sort of like mood on the floor when you walk the corridors of the office is quite important. You don't want people to thinking about, I'm here today, whether I'm going to be there tomorrow or not. There's a greater focus on skills, for sure, that you don't want to lose talent, so you're upskilling people to do better and use AI or enable AI them to achieve better and larger in their current roles. But clearly there is there. But when it comes to sort of like the product side and the market side, particularly in the tech business, I think speed is quite important there, right? And there, the key deciding factor when you sit in sort of like meeting rooms and discuss and brainstorm ideas is about the agility of the tech platform. If the platform is agile, you can build layers that Anish was talking about on the top for it to actually interface with your customers to actually query responses rather than going through a workflow and tools. But speed there is important and cost to deliver it. So if the platform is not agile, it's just going to take you a lot more money to actually deploy those functionalities that your customers in the market are asking for. And that's going to hit your cash flow. People may capitalize those costs, on the balance sheet, but it may hit your free cash flow conversion and then returns on the top. But the most important part here is to think about, and Anish touched upon it, is which kind of businesses that you think will actually survive. So we've already seen a massive shift in the kind of businesses investors want to focus on versus, oh, that's going to be a difficult one in the current environment, let's park it on the side, right? So data, Anish referred to, like if they are, like I worked on a transaction for Goldman called Track Unit, and they collect 120,000 data points on sort of like they work in construction software business. They collect so much of data, and it's proprietary data that you can't go on Anthropic or Claude and sort of like query it. Is not available in the public domain. So it's your own proprietary data that you can use to guide your customers to drive better efficiency in their workflows. People are thinking about businesses like health tech, where the customer base is quite sticky. Long lead buying cycles, but once you're there, the churn rate or customers wanting to change is very, very low. Those kind of businesses, tech-enabled services, where there is a human in the loop doing something, using technology to deliver it, and that human is not dispensable. So those kind of businesses are actually going to be winning more rather than sort of the horizontal platform or workflow kind of tools.
Thank you, that's very insightful. So we've talked about the levers, we've talked about how it's underwritten, and now AI. Let's talk about when it has failed and when our transactions haven't created the value that we expected them to. And I'll look at both the investors here. Can you give us concrete examples of one deal where it did not create value and what went wrong?
Yeah, I think, it's important to learn as well, right? You've got to fail to really succeed eventually, right? So that's very important, right? And I think yes, there have been a few failures with any investment cycle, with volume of investments. You go through failures, you've bought the wrong business, and hey, yeah, you realize you bought the wrong business, your value creation initiatives are not working, and basically, yeah, you've lost money, right? And I think the learning point for us has been the alignment, right, between the shareholders and the management team, right? If there isn't an alignment on how you're going to make a 3x multiple of money, hey, it's a disaster, right, to begin with, essentially. Now, I think, yeah, we've had a few experiences, and it was more about a change leadership team early on. You do not get along with the CEO if you're not aligned on the strategy, if you're not aligned on the value creation plan. Do not just sit on your ass. You got to move and change. Right? Change the leadership early on. Do not get scared of changing the leadership, because ultimately, as a PE operator, if you want to scale up, you've got to be relying on management teams to deliver value.
I couldn't agree more.
I totally agree with Anish. And I'll give you an example, actually two examples, two contrasting examples. So in the UK, we invested in two fiber assets. One has done really well, and one has not done well and is almost going to be insolvent. In one, we were a minority investor, so we could not bring about change, which Anish mentioned. In the other one, we had a management team and we brought about change. And in spite of both of them working in a similar ecosystem and the environment, one has done really well while other could not. And it was all about people and the right management team. We could create the right structure and influence. In one, we were a minority, we could not. And it didn't survive, and the majority investor, we had disagreement on strategy. And the learning is, how could you do things better to bring about active management and positive change? And that only makes you a better investor. You always remember things which haven't gone well as compared to the ones which have gone well. So again, we're constantly learning and evolving. And again, picking up from Anish, it's all about people.
Interesting. I just hope nobody in the audience works for our portfolio companies, because they'll be very uncomfortable right now that we're so quick to change management. But I agree. If you're late to change management, you've lost a big amount of the value that you could have created. Now, I know we can continue this discussion for much longer, but in the interest of time, I'd like to bring it to a close with one final question. And this question came from the audience and was requested by the audience to be answered for the young professionals, as well as also for the experienced professionals who want to pivot to either M&A or the PE landscape. What would you give them as advice?
I'm happy to go first. I mean, I started as an article trainee like a number of people have as a CA, and then I was doing audit for 8 years of my life. But I think what benefited me in making a move was the focus. I was focused, I was doing infrastructure audit that allowed me to do infrastructure valuations, infrastructure M&A, and then I am on the buy side of infrastructure for the last 14 years. So in my view, if you are really keen in a particular, because private equity is huge, you got to pick a domain and stick to it and build specialism. And with that specialism and focus, you will find your way if you're really interested. But I think if you keep changing sectors or focus, whatever your niche is, then it's quite difficult. So my view is specialism, focus helps. And then, and as you probably heard from Ankur earlier, that you want to be in the 3%. The 3% is important, but in my view, I mean, not everybody can be in the 3%. The 97% is the majority. And I feel if you remain focused and build your specialism in private equity, you can definitely find a way as a CA.
So I've seen a lot of European founders, right? I'm not trying to generalize, but hey, a lot of young European founders, right? The thinking or the mindset has been, hey, I want to grow my top line. I don't really care about EBITDA. It's more about growth at all costs rather than profitable growth, right? And I'm coming to the answer, right? But what people have been lacking is the commercial acumen or the commercial mindset. I think we got to be really proud that as chartered accountants, genuinely speaking, and as Indian chartered accountants, we are blessed with that commercial acumen. Right from growing up, childhood days, negotiating with a vegetable vendor, right? To going to school, to negotiating with the canteen guy, right? To thinking about, hey, I'm investing in the stock market. And I must appreciate we've got a superstar from the stock market here, Mr. Anand Rathi. But the thinking has all been commercial. How will my $1 million convert into 5 million in 5 years' time, right? That commercial acumen for Indian chartered accountants, for me, is genuinely speaking the biggest asset. So whatever you do, wherever you go, please keep that commercial mindset and the commercial acumen intact and keep building on it. No applause?
I like the vegetable analogy. I think it's spot on. Look, I would say I think people need to set high standards for themselves. I think if you set high standards for what you want to achieve, then you've got a plan at least you can try and pursue it. Even if necessarily you have to deal with adversity on the way, you have to be resilient. One of the things we've been talking about today is being resilient, especially in the current environment. But I think if someone has ambition, if someone sets high standards and ambitions and is resilient and keeps trying, they will get there. And I think I agree with you about the specialization. You have to focus on a particular niche. If you become an expert in that, it becomes a very marketable skill. You could, move into that sector and off you go into either PE or into M&A work. And it's very, very focused in that regard, and that's probably the most important thing. So I would just say keep focused, keep trying, and do your best.
Well, what more can I actually add, right? So in very simple terms, if I have to say sort of like a couple of things, it is going to be about what are you good at? M&A, private equity, I think we refer to the word specialization, right? I think that's very, very important. what do you bring to the table? Like in this market, in this space where people are not talking about anything less than 3x, if it is bigger, then it's great. I think what value you can actually bring to the table. What are you famous for? People are not looking for generalists. So whatever you're good at, stick to it. And you got to just think big and aggressive.
Thank you. Maybe I'll take the liberty to add to that. From my own personal experience, where I had to go to Germany and learn the language at age 27, start from ABCD again, hard work. And I think passing the CA exam taught us that anything else is easy. So hard work, humor, networking, and perseverance. These are soft skills that also one should not forget. And if you keep your focus on the goal, there is no reason why you can't enter the market. On that note, thank you so much for your time,
Thank you.
insights, and thank you everyone for joining us today.